I'm Jim Check with Ian Burns. It's Monday, November 17th, the big day, the budget day. But we got some headlines for you, though. Do or die day for the Liberals. The PBO office throws some more shade on Liberal claims. Will there be an election, or will it squeak by with absentee votes? Booing the PM, carbon capture seems to be the focus. Slow road for projects. How many energy hostages will be released? Inflation slows due to energy. Aliens may already be here, and our top doc wants to fix the stigma around them. How's that? Another government bureaucrat on spending spree, no surprise there. What does that all mean when you Canada enters space race. Look out, world. Here we come. BC party leaders on different paths. And is Al Gore losing his mind? All that and a lot more on The Really Big Show. Again, we're on every morning at 9 a.m. live here on the Now Media YouTube channel. You can also watch it later. We're also on X. We're also on a multitude of platforms. And like I said, it's all available later. We'll cut it up as well. So we appreciate it if you'd like, follow, subscribe, do all those things. But the big day is here. This is the confidence vote. This is the third vote on the budget. Either it passes or it doesn't. And if it doesn't pass, we get a Christmas election.
It would be January, they think, but yeah, it would have to be. The campaign would be over Christmas, yeah, which would be
a Christmas present. How's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see the live up. There we go. Is it? Yeah. I don't see the live up. Do I? I don't know what's going on, Rommel. Is it up?
It's live on YouTube.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I'm just crazy. A lot of people have said that. There you go. Budget government's fade up in the air as MPs vote on this budget here. And but let's hear from our friend Jason Jacques first. He was interviewed by Vasi Kapelis again on CTV, and he has some more warnings about the fancy accounting there in the budget.
From our perspective, we think that the definition the government's used around capital investments is overly expansive. And in particular, they've thrown some things in there, some categories of spending, which other jurisdictions in other countries would not typically include. Most notably, the inspiration, of course, for this framework comes from the United Kingdom. And in the case of the UK, it's a far narrower definition. And of course, the biggest risk with all of this is if you're not spending on productive capital investments, if you have an overly broad definition, then you're not going to get the investment impact and the growth in the economy that the government expects.
Let's talk more. Is basically long-term investment into things like.
So what do you think?
Well, I think I learned a lot from that interview. I don't know if you watched it all, but it's worth watching all of it. Number one thing, the first thing I learned is what a sort of gentle, timid little soul this man is. He's such a, he even looks a bit sort of androgynous, dare I say, but he's such a little shrinking violet, and he kept being asked these questions, and he's like, well, actually, about that, totally doesn't match his reputation. Like if you only read the headlines, you'd be like, this guy is coming out with these words like condemning the Liberal government. He's not like that at all. He's like very sort of soft and mild-mannered. Apparently his name is also Jakes, Jason Jakes, not Jax, even though it's spelled like Jax. But he said he was applying for the job as well. That was another thing, that he wants to have the job, and he was like saying, but it's up to the Prime Minister if he wants to go in a different direction, and I won't do anything, me lord. But the important thing, besides all of that comedy, the important thing that he said was, or highlighted was, well, as people are already saying in the comments here on YouTube, that he referenced the United Kingdom, which is an absolute basket case on the verge of potentially an IMF bailout. Lots of serious voices in Britain, including the leader of the opposition in Britain, are openly expressing fear that the country might be headed towards a bailout by the International Monetary Fund, something usually reserved for third world countries. Britain is a disaster of a country, and it's yet another area where Canada's trying to imitate Canada when it comes to the way that the budget is put out and arranged. But even there, Jake said that's the inspiration. But the Canadian government is actually doing it, or the Liberal Party is actually doing it in an even worse way than the British are. It's even less transparent than what the British do. And then he also highlighted that and we noticed this. Watch this show if you want to know what's going to happen months in advance. We noticed this when Champagne started to move away from debt to GDP ratio and started to talk about deficit to GDP ratio, which for people who aren't initiated might sound trivial, but there's a very big difference between those two things. And Champagne started to move there, especially when he was talking about comparing Canada to other G7 countries. That's because the deficit to GDP ratio is better in comparison to other G7 countries than debt to GDP ratio. But as he says, Jakesy boy here, the only real measure of fiscal health is debt to GDP ratio. Deficit to GDP ratio is a secondary metric. It's debt to GDP ratio that matters. And that's what the Liberals have moved away from. And he said that that's not good, basically.
This will be a real travesty if they replace him, though, because if we remember when Donald Trump replaced the statistician in the United States, even the Canadian media lost its minds. It was a threat to democracy. How dare Trump remove somebody that's just reporting the numbers? And this guy is a CPA, and he's done a good job. And like you said, they've actually done a few hit jobs on him already. He's just reporting what's in the accounting standards. He's basically reporting. Like, their fancy footwork here is not it's not how accounting is done. And he's just saying a lot of the stuff that they put into the capital belongs in operational. And it's just fancy footwork to kind of fool the public. And if we don't have these watchdogs in there, then it's just a free-for-all. And we're going to get into some of the free-for-all later. We're going to see some of this uncontrolled spending, and we're going to see some of the opaqueness that the Liberals continue to drive.
It's a disaster, though. Like you say, if we lose these watchdog people, look, Canada is the land of the credential, as we've said many times. And this guy obviously has credentials of a sort, doesn't he? He's head of this watchdog, and he's got all the right degrees and everything. Oh, he's the interim head, and he's come out and said, "This is quite scary." So usually in the Canadian system, that would mean, "Oh crap! Like, I'm scared now. Let's listen to this guy." But what's happened in this instance is they've got people with even better credentials to come out and say he's full of you know what, this guy, he's not serious. So therefore their credentials trump his credentials, and then we're left in a pretty hopeless position, because the Canadians with power, the electorate, the boomocracy, they're just going to go with the best credentials. And unfortunately for Jason Jakes, it's not him. It's other people like the IMF, Mark Carney himself even. They've come out and out-credentialed him. So now within the Canadian political system and cultural system, we're in a bad spot, because now we don't have any credentialed voice to come out and call the alarm.
Well, we've seen this in many other industries, even the media. They have selected the chosen media that has the correct voice, and the same thing they're doing here. And they've done this in so many different instances. They're selected voices, economists, and it's just like, we got to find the right person saying that. The climate stuff, all the people that they select seems to go along with their narrative, or living off of their tax dollars. So if they get rid of him, the CPA society should be losing its mind as well, and should most economists, because it's not just him saying this. This is many large organizations that have said that. Many organizations, including economists and banks and that have said this budget makes no sense. And
well, I mean, all the banks, the best response I've seen to this from a Liberal perspective is that it doesn't really say anything. It's like a damp squib. It's like it's the rocket that didn't launch kind of thing. That's the biggest compliment. The worst thing I've seen from the banks, all the mainstream boys, all those delicious credentials that Canadians love to feast on. The worst thing I've seen is, this is terrifying, and this is not sustainable. And like Jake said,
shocking.
Really the main thrust of what Jake said, there is not enough capital investment here to justify the level of debt that we're in and the level of debt that we're taking on. Because as in personal life, you only really take debt on if you know that it's going to pay off in the long run. And that's what a lot of what the banks have said, and the economists and observers, they've said there's not really enough investment in capital here that's going to actually bring a return in the future. It's a lot of operational spending.
For the sad reality is that for more than a decade, Canada's been drifting away from its economic strengths. And that's when liberal policies, right? It's not that our people have lost the drive, it's federal policies consistently worked against the very engines that built this country, and that's our energy. We've had anti-energy policies in Canada, and that's what's brought our economy to its knees. And then Donald Trump just took advantage of that. We've been on our knees already. You can pull up chart after chart after chart. And then our watchdogs, supposedly our media is supposed to be our watchdogs and hold power to account, been brought to its knees as well with Bill C-18. That's the big one, and I keep repeating this. Bill C-18 was sold as a lifeline for journalism, and it did the opposite, right? It choked out outlets, and it basically put everybody at the begging bowl. Half the salaries are now paid by the government. And then the CBC just wallows in the trough, and I mean, you'd have to be blind not to see their bias.
Well, even if you don't think they're biased, another question that I would put to you is, do you think that there's enough diversity in the media? And I don't mean stupid things like skin color. I mean actual real diversity. Like, is there a sort of conservative, libertarian, right, hard right, left, hard left? Do you see all of these varieties in the media landscape in Canada? Because if you do, then you're seeing something that I don't see.
And the cool thing for the Liberals, I guess, you know, their big plus for all their failures over 10 years, they got to hide them all because they got to point to the boogeyman next door, the Trump straw man. Everything is his fault. All their policies that sow division, hate, and the wasted, even Chrystia Freeland said it herself, a wasted decade on identity politics and virtue signaling. And here we are doing almost the same thing. We're going to get into a lot of it here in a little bit here. But here's Dan Knight, another person that, a journalist as well, that looks at financial journalists. This is what he has to say about it. He's not holding back. This goes against the accounting standards. That's what the thing is when they try to say, oh, it's a different way of looking at things. Why would we want to look at a different way of looking at things unless you're trying to hide stuff? Why don't we just present it as it's supposed to be presented? Why is it always a game? And why is the media not holding them to account? Like, there should be. If this, again, was Stephen Harper's government, remember the $16 glass of orange juice, how they lost their minds over that $16 glass of orange juice? Different world.
Was it even 16? I feel like it was even less than that.
I think it was 16. No, there's a bunch of stuff out on the internet now because that young lady that spent $176,000 in 9 days is being compared to the $16 glass of orange juice. And where's all the attention on that? $176,000, that Liberal MP, in 9 days. Amazing.
It's not the same when they do it, though, is it? They have justification for it, obviously.
It
was $16. For some reason, I thought it was less than that. What's that adjusted for inflation? $16, probably about $300 nowadays.
It's almost like an Adam Sandler movie where he has to spend all that money she did, like $176,000 in 9 days. I just went to the CBC website just to see if they're covering this budget and that, but no, they're covering Christmas presents. So they got lots going on with Christmas presents. Although they have the budget and government's fate up in the air as MPs vote. TD settles human rights complaint. Yeah, not much though.
They got a story about Rogers being terrible.
There you go. The NDP, you know, that's their usual fallback. You know, the NDP will support us, but it doesn't sound like it. But let's listen to this little clip here.
Vote is set for tomorrow. The Conservatives and Bloc have said they will vote against it. That leaves the NDP. So do you think the Liberals have done enough to get other parties on board here?
I think a week or so ago, I would have said yes, but I'm not sure now. Part of the reason is that the NDP might feel they have nothing to lose. They did very poorly in the last election. They might risk everything and see if they can get a little bit of a room here to expand the party in a snap surprise election.
But there's other paths, though, and that's what some people are saying. The other paths are some people may not vote for it, but they'll just not vote. They'll either not show up for the vote or they'll just abstain from voting today, which would get the Liberal the pass.
In this context, that is a vote for the Liberal government. That's what has to be. That's again where we rely on our beautiful, genius standard media to interpret all of this. They have, because that's probably what's going to happen. There's going to be 5 or 6 abstentions. I think they only need 4. Bob's your uncle. That'll be it sorted. But you have to look at that when this occurs, which it almost certainly will. The media, and I suppose the average voter, has to look at that as the people who abstained voted for the Liberal government. And they'll have done so almost certainly with the connivance, if not the instruction of their party leaders. Because, as was explained here in passing, the NDP are a calamity, and they don't want another election. Nor do the Conservatives really, because Poilievre's gone through a real rough patch. I don't think he's ready to have an election. And I mean, who cares what the Bloc think, or the Greens for that matter? But they don't want the election. But the thing is, they need to own it. They need to stand up and stand tall and proud and honest and principled and say, yeah, we voted for this in effect with the abstentions. Again, because it's not like you can say, oh, I wasn't in Ottawa. I was got to see my sick mother somewhere else on the other side of the world or something like that. You can't say that because you can use your phone. Well, you can't use it outside of Canada, but you can use your phone to vote, as we've seen so many times. Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland doing that really awkward thing where they look and smile and like strange people that they are. You can do that anywhere in Canada, so there's no excuse for an abstention. You could even have like malaria or something like that and be on the floor. You could still vote. So there's really no excuse not to. So the people that abstain have voted for the Liberal government, and it really needs to be emphasized.
I do agree with this Jamie, because the NDP really have nothing to lose. They have no party status. I mean, it can't get much worse for them. So there is that.
Exactly. And look, they're the likeliest ones to abstain, aren't they? And when that comes out, certainly we'll make a noise about that, and I'm sure other people will, that the NDP voted for the Liberal government once again. They bailed them out. I don't think that's going to help the NDP. But obviously, in their opinion, I would guess, they'll be thinking, we'll have a new leader soon, and this will all be forgotten. And that new leader can just pretend that wasn't the decision that they made. You know, they wouldn't have voted for that budget kind of thing. But it's a bit of a cheap trick, isn't it? And I feel like the NDP might be digging their grave a little deeper with this.
Well, Mark Carney went to his fourth big sporting event, and this time a Canadian team will win. And the other three were a loss. The soccer was a loss. The hockey was a loss. And what was the third one again? Hockey, soccer, and baseball.
Baseball.
All three losses, and this time guaranteed win for a Canadian team. But also thinking he's very popular. Not so much. You got some boos there at the thing, but then the media cleaned that up real quickly and just like, oh no, there was boos and cheers, and I imagine there were some people cheering. There's no lie in that. But instead of, if this would have been Donald Trump, they would have been just like, they would have been heralding again how many boos he got, because it was clearly a majority of boos. And they did ask the Prime Minister as he arrived at Parliament there today what he thought of the boos.
Very tough. You were booed. What does that show you about rust and disaffection?
Look, we've got, we meet with everybody. We represent the entire country. We were cheered as well as the other. And we have representation across the country. I'll say one other thing, which is that in a few hours I'll have a virtual meeting with the First Ministers of the provinces and territories, and we're all looking to work together. I met a few of the premiers when I was in Winnipeg, working together for the country, whoever people voted for. Thanks very much.
But that's the whole point. They don't feel represented. Silly Mark. And also when he says that, we've got representation across the country in Ottawa, Gatineau, Montreal, Toronto. It's like, yeah, that's where you win elections, isn't it? Not over there where people boo you. That's the point.
Well, there were some people that are doing a lot worse than booing as well, but we won't get into that. But, Alberta, like he's lucky he wasn't in Alberta. They might have been hurling their popcorn. But wild stuff. But he says, he said on Friday that the cabinet will cut the federal payroll by a tenth and find $60 billion in savings. And remarks came hours after the budget office warned there was a little chance the cabinet would meet its latest deficit targets and remains too secretive or will find savings. Imagine that. And he says that reducing the size of public service by 10% and cutting management consultants by 20%. That's one that should be cut by like 80%. Like the amount of money they paid to McKinsey & Co. was just absolutely astronomical. And I think basically McKinsey & Company have been running Canada for the past 10 years. If you look at all the marketing, that's what the Liberals have been really good at, marketing. They're really good at campaigning and really good at marketing. Got to hand it to them for that. And a lot of credit for that goes to Katie Telford and to the McKinsey & Co.
The backroom boys and girls, yeah.
Yeah, the federal payroll number is about 445,000 according to the Budget Office. Annual spending on consultants, ready? Take a guess. Just take a guess of what they spend annually on consultants. Anybody on there? Anybody want to take a stab at it out there listening? Just take a guess. Gander. $25 billion. $25 billion. Just look at the savings right there. Put that into the military. Just crazy. And they got all these employees, and yet they need consultants. And we've done so many stories where they say a lot of the bureaucrats say, oh, you know, we just don't have the knowledge base to make the decisions. We need consultants. Then just maybe get better employees then, right? The average salary.
But then the unions come out and they're furious and say, no, we can do it, guys. But obviously the Liberals don't believe that to be true, do they? And I think they don't want to stir the hornet's nest by firing lots of them and hiring new ones instead. But there's so many other things, like, you know, they're employing people who live in places like Toronto and obviously the United States. Like, they don't want to live in Ottawa, these people, and they don't want to earn a government salary, even though it's pretty high. They still don't want to do that. They want to be in the big city earning big bucks. And that's why they have to go to the consultants. But it raises all sorts of questions, doesn't it, about how government is done here.
Average salary, $136,000. Starting salary for Canadian military, just over $40,000. Cabinet in its November 3rd budget put this deficit at $78.3 billion, more than triple the original target. Get that, run that through your head for a bit. Triple the original target. It's the largest deficit in Canadian history outside the pandemic area. And Jason Jacks, at the September 5th testimony, says, you know, something's going to break. It should be very alarming. We don't use the word unsustainable. Unsustainable is mean you don't have an option to say, maybe I'll wait a couple of years, I'll see how things go. He did say the words unsustainable, shocking, stupefying. Yet, if this was a story in the United States with Trump, and Canadian media would be just using those headlines time after time after time. Yet nothing, right? Other than they went and found people to discredit Jason Jacks.
Yeah.
And then I'm surprised they're not in this budget. They're not talking about the emissions cap removal and how many times carbon capture shows up in there. You don't need to put that up there. Take that off. Yeah. You know, it's puzzling that the Conservatives aren't talking about it. It's puzzling that that's not one of their things. Like, here's the emissions cap being removed, and why haven't they talked about it more? Because it looks likely it's going to be replaced with this CCUS. Because they've been talking about it, they've been parading it around. And here's Tim Hodgson touting, this week we announced new major projects being referred to the Major Projects Office. After the day of the mainstream media, the one that get a lot of the government subsidies, touted it as, you know, this great thing, and that a lot of the reaction from outside the media has been very, very negative. And it's been to the point where all of these projects have been basically held as hostages for a long time, and they're slowly releasing hostages, energy hostages. But we do have a little clip here from Tim Hodgson, again interviewed by Vasi Kapelis at CTV.
It isn't in anyone's interest. I'm simply putting to you, if I recall, prior to them being put, that project being put on the list, they had already been saying that they would make a final investment decision in early next year. So being put on the list didn't exactly accelerate the certainty with which you're saying, you know, your government is providing investors like LNG Canada.
So I know your audience doesn't always have complete clarity on how these projects work, but there are a huge number of decisions still for the proponent to make. There were a number of things they needed from the federal and provincial government, that through the Major Projects Office were coordinated between the federal government and the provincial government, and that clarity has been provided to the proponents. There's 5 different equity proponents for LNG Canada 2. They say they have what they need from us now, and they will be making their decision in the spring. So we have significantly advanced the likelihood that we will see a final investment decision in the spring.
So even that, like, these things are not being fast-tracked. Like the Sissons mine has been held hostage since 2017, and they're saying they're going to fast-track it. And their fast-tracking means they're moving it from, I don't know where. It reminds me of that movie Office, where they move it from one desk to the other. They're going to move it from this desk to the Major Projects Office, where that lady gets his $600,000 plus a year salary. And then she's going to do what with it? Because all of these things, even Carney has said, these aren't like a go-ahead. These are now put there for consideration to go ahead.
It doesn't, nothing that's happening matches what the Liberal Party told us during the campaign about how dire the situation was, about how we were in basically a war and we had to like get our helmets on and get going, and we had to really change things. None of this looks like the Liberals ever believed anything that they said, which is probably the worst thing you could ever have said about you as, you know, supposedly people of principle.
And do you think it's better to watch people's actions or listen to their words? Because actions speak louder than words. And we've seen it. Well, we saw just recently Brookfield and Brookfield with Westinghouse advanced, along with Cameco, they own Westinghouse together, advanced $80 billion US, over $100 billion Canadian, into starting, I think it was 8 nuclear plants in the United States. Like, let's go. That's a Canadian company spending money south of the border. And here's another one for you. Enbridge green lights pipeline expansion to U.S. Gulf Coast. Says focus is south first. Why?
Exactly. Why wouldn't it be, would be a better question. Why wouldn't it be? It's so obvious. Because it'll actually come to fruition there. There's a very reasonable chance that you won't waste $300 million like they did on the Northwest pipeline.
or $1 billion that Tech wasted on the Frontier project. And Ian said it best, I think it was last week on Friday. Instead of removing the emissions, Bill 69 and Bill C-48, they create a new bill so that gives the Liberals even more power. They recreate this Bill C-5 so they can bless certain projects. Instead of removing that so you can find certainty and there can be competition, now it's up to you got to go see the king and decide which projects get moved from one desk to the next desk, not actually going on. And so these corporations, Enbridge, including Carney's Brookfield, said the United States is fast-tracking things. They're cutting regulation, cutting taxation, and helping us move projects forward. Where do they go?
But it's like when you chat to people talking about the common law system that evolved in England and that sort of exists here as well. One of the ways that it's described is everything is permitted unless expressly forbidden. That's the system of law. Obviously, there are other systems which are quite the opposite. That's the system of law that we have. This legislation and this sort of environment that the Liberals have created is almost like everything is forbidden unless I touch you on the head and I give you permission. It's so strange because Mark Carney he bloody loves the English, doesn't he? He's always gone to Britain. He's enraptured by Britain and the British way of doing things for some reason I couldn't possibly understand. And yet he's created a system which is fundamentally anti-English, and therefore you could say anti-Canadian, which is you must assume as an entrepreneur, as a commercial enterprise, whatever, that whatever it is you're thinking you're going to do, it's not allowed. At least in the natural resources sphere, it's not permitted unless I tell you that you can do it. In which case, green light, Bob's your uncle, let's get shovels in the ground. That is just extraordinarily strange, and it's a real divergence from tradition. You know, I might sound like a trivial observation, but this is a really strange governing philosophy in a sort of Canadian or English or common law context.
It's odd. Whenever you hit a nerve, when you actually come up with something that is just like absolutely kind of like stunning, like, you know, the investment capital fleeing to the United States, including Mark Carney's Brookfield, including Enbridge and all that stuff, and they're choosing to go say, here comes the Liberals. They're saying, what about this? What about that? They just don't want to deal with the truth. You know what I mean? Now he wants us to talk about Doge. He wants to talk about ostriches and fake news and all that stuff. Just deal with the real issue. The real issue is people aren't investing. Canadian companies are not investing in Canada. Canfor said it too. British Columbia is not investable. And this is way before Trump. And this is proof is in the pudding. They're going south. They're going south. The money is fleeing Canada. So you can try to make distractions all you want, or we can start to deal with the truth and say, why aren't they coming here? It's because of the regulation, the red tape, and the opaqueness in the liberal strategies or whatever they're doing. They're just not honest about what they're doing.
And it's not, you say investment. I mean, a lot of people might think, oh, I don't care what these big corporations do or whatever. Like, that's not my business. Another thing to look at is a chart that we show all the time, which is the dramatic, shocking, stupefying, you might say, divergence in living standards between Canadians and Americans that happened in the last sort of 10 or so years. That means, you know, you might not realize it, but you and your fellow citizens are poorer, and you're going to keep getting poorer unless things change. And that's poor in absolute terms, you could say, or you could not say, you could argue against that, but certainly relative to the Americans. The Americans are on track now to be just so much richer than Canadians. It's going to become like a major national embarrassment. They're going to be able to come along with their delicious greenbacks and just like buy things up. They're going to be able to just have a laugh. They're going to come here like little lords ruling over us. It's not healthy to have a country, like two countries that are very similar and next door to each other, and one of them is vastly richer than the other. You know, you're asking for trouble there.
And I would say to Lightning Rod, and we love him, like he's great, he comes all the time, Lightning Rod, just stay on topic, right? Just stay on topic and be honest, just stay on topic. Don't start throwing out distractions when you don't like the topic. Just stay on topic. It'll just make you seem a lot brighter. There you go. And this is it. The Carney's major projects, more PR than nation building. And that, I mean, you and I listened to that whole press conference. We talked about it, and we looked through the projects. These are all projects that are all kind of like have been held hostage for a long time, and it's not really anything new there. There's just moving them along. There's no big announcements. There's no, like the big announcement would be a Northern Gateway pipeline. And that's what everybody's waiting for. And Sunday came and went.
Even Keystone XL.
Sunday came and went, and what do we have? Daniel Smith's deadline. Yep. Sunday came and went. Mark Carney said it's even before that. He said that. He said, are we going to have that MOU with Alberta? Oh, you'll likely even have it before Sunday. Here it is Monday. Here it is Monday.
But, you know, Danielle Smith seems to be at least temporarily appeased, doesn't she? She's not...
well, I think...
She's not jumping up and down on the table. Not yet, anyway.
They're playing that game. We removed the emissions cap for you, or we're going to remove the emissions cap, and we're going to replace it with CCUS, which is going to be allowing private corporations to tax our energy, which is just absolutely ludicrous. I've done a few LinkedIn posts on it. You got to go read them. You got to go read them because they're so... That speech that Mark Carney, remember that when he was in the UN? And he made that speech, and it sounded like, even the media said, I don't know what he said, right? With STGs and MMBs and all these acronyms and everything. People are just like, I don't know what he said. You go break it down and listen to it. It's going to be on our Now Media TikTok here later. We actually asked ChatGPT to break it down and tie it back into carbon capture. Man, it makes a lot of sense there if you break it down and listen to it. And it's what I said. It's basically moving money from weak hands, investment banks, to strong hands, government and pension funds. Imagine that. Anyway, here's David.
Which has so many implications. That's scary for so many reasons, isn't it? We probably don't have time to go into. But I mean, that's like dragging people's, pensions, what they expect to live on when they're older and can't work anymore. It's dragging that into quite experimental and politicized investments.
It's financializing climate change to better fill the coffers of investment banks, and companies like Brookfield that have invested billions. You go to my LinkedIn and read them. There's 3 posts I did in a row on climate. CCUS, you have to read them because that's where Canada is moving toward. And this David Knightleg, he talked about it too, releasing the hostages. Like, I mean, a lot of these projects have been sitting in purgatory forever. Like, Dominic LeBlanc was bragging about the Sissons project back in 2017. 2017. And now they're saying you remember that movie Office, right? Where the efficiency experts come in and they say, ask the guy what he does. He said, well, I take the stuff from my desk and I put it on the other guy's desk. Just like that's.
Is that Office Space?
I think it's Office Space. Yeah, sorry, Office Space.
Yeah. I haven't seen that in a while. That is a very amusing film, though. It's a good satire on bureaucracy, isn't it? So very appropriate for this conversation.
And we're just talking about the Sisson mine here. It's chosen as one of Carney's major projects. And again, this project happens to be, you said it when we talked about it on Friday. It's not even a Canadian thing. I thought we were putting Canada first. This one happens to be owned by New Zealand, 85% of it. The next
astonishing,
slide.
Isn't it? And then obviously the Americans are in on that LNG thing, aren't they?
Yeah,
that's a Texan company, I think.
You remember,
got the major stake in that one.
Rachel Gilmore being accused of a liberal shill, and she's kind of a, I don't know what she is, but anyway, she's very outspoken, and then she's just gone full on against Mark Carney here. Her and the Green Party leader, the new Green leader here in BC, Emily. And I'm not going to play her rant, but she goes and exposes a whole bunch of stuff in this. You can go find her on the internet there, but she goes through and exposes and ties money back to Jeffrey Epstein and this LNG and BlackRock and a whole bunch of things. But that LNG project is all it has a very minor interest from First Nations. They trumpet it like typical liberal fashion. You got to look under the hood to see what's under there, because they bill it as a Lamborghini engine. Underneath, you open the hood and there's this Lada in there, and you're just like, what is this, right?
That face there, where you got this freeze frame, it's not a particularly kind or generous freeze frame of that poor woman there. But that's the last thing you see before HR tells you that you're being fired for internet posts or something, isn't it? It's like, it's just. I just had to make that comment. I'm sorry. You talk about Office Space.
Inflation dips in Canada. Why? Remember they told us it had nothing to do with it. Energy. Inflation across Canada dipped slightly as gas prices down 9.4% year over year. Imagine that. Inflation, the next slide there. Got to wake up the guy on the board there.
No, not that one.
Nope, not that one.
Previous one.
There we go. Anyway, we don't have a budget like CBC, so we'd have like 12 guys back there. Anyway.
Yeah, the food. Look at the food. It's a nightmare, isn't it? Food year over year. Although the month to month looks better for food. I think there's actually, on a monthly basis, down 0.6% food bought from the store. Like grocery prices then. But that's not enough to make people feel any better, really, is it, in the grand scheme? Because like I said, just look here, 3.8% or 3.4% year over year food. So that's October this year compared to last year. I mean, it's just insane, isn't it? Food in October last year, how expensive was food? Now it's 3.4% more expensive. It's bleak. The food situation. It's talk about the UN. I can't believe they haven't got involved in that. It's an absolute atrocity what happens in this country with food prices.
This one doesn't make any sense either. Like home and mortgage insurance for homeowners increased since 2020, almost 39%, and car insurance up 20%. Like that's ridiculous. Like we need better options. We need more options here in Canada. We need more options. Or people can start.
Abysmal. Yeah.
People can start getting together and doing self-insurance. You know what I mean? Like you can get 10 people in a group and self-insure, because like this is like for the in BC. Like I mean, there has to be better options. This is just ridiculous. I mean, all these.
And then there was also the cell services. That's been going down for ages, and that's up 7.7% there, it says, year over year. And the explanation from Statistics Canada was, oh, they just put them up. No other explanation, just they put their prices up. And it's like, yeah, because there's only 3 really, isn't there? So if they decide to put them up they go, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Do you remember the big Liberal promise that they were going to lower cell phone costs? You know, it's so expensive in Canada. Like in China, it's almost like next to free. Many parts of the world, you can go to Europe and you can buy a SIM. You can just buy a phone, and you can buy these SIMs for like $10, which is good for a month. Not here.
You can get monthly. You can get monthly. Like contract, but not a contract because you can get out of it. But like a monthly SIM.
Yeah.
In the UK for about 10-ish dollars. It's just cheap as chips. And same, the internet is loads cheaper as well, and food is just so much cheaper. It is, I mean, there are big differences, but it is possible when you have lots of competition to bring prices down for sure.
Starlink, I whispered it into your ears. Starlink for your internet at home.
Although that is quite expensive, isn't it? But I guess it's going to get cheaper as it grows.
Yeah, they just put new packages out, and it's month to month, and you can take it with you. You can take it on a holiday. You can take it camping. You can take it wherever you want.
Take it to the Arctic.
You can screw it to the roof of your car like I have. You can do whatever you want. And now Ian was talking about how bad the UK is. You want to know how bad the UK is? Guess who does worse? Let's have a look. Who does worse? Oops.
This is growth, isn't it? Yeah. So this is not absolute. I think Britain is still a smidgen below Canada in the absolute terms, but in the trajectory is very much that Britain will overtake Canada. Unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable.
The GB is on the way up, and the CDN is on the way down.
What's crazy is the British. If you read the British intelligentsia when they're talking about this, they're pulling their hair out, and they're like devastated. They're in despair in Britain at how impoverished the country has become, and they look at things like GDP per capita all the time, and they're just like, oh my god. And what they do in Britain is they look at Poland, which was obviously a country that was under the boot of communism for 50 years or whatever it was, suffered terribly under Russian imperialism and the gruesome communist system, was then liberated in the 90s and is now on the way to surpassing Britain in GDP per capita. Like, it's going to happen, I think it's like 5 years or something it's predicted to happen. So the British are freaking out about that. Meanwhile, we're over here, we should be freaking out about not just Poland, but Britain. Britain is an absolute basket case. I can't emphasize it enough. The country is in a colossal mess. And to think that they're somehow managing to squeeze out better GDP per capita growth in Canada. People, whoever it is that's been in charge since 2016, as this chart shows us, whoever you are, you should be very ashamed of yourselves. But I can't think who it was that was in charge, but you should be ashamed.
And we continue down the same road. That's the shameful part. We're down the same road, same team. And don't forget who is the economic advisor, who advised us not to do the Northern Gateway Pipeline. Canada has been brought to its knees by Liberal policies because we don't have an alternative market for our #1 export. We don't have an alternative market. It was the Liberals that did it, and it was Mark Carney advising them to do it. He testified in committee that not to do the Northern Gateway Pipeline. And look how Brookfield's making money hand over fist in the United States with pipelines. It's just crazy. It's just like you kibosh our natural wealth. We've done this to ourselves, self-harm. And here's a little chart for you. GDP reduced by 8%. This is after Brexit. I mean, they're tying it to Brexit here. So, but
doesn't really make sense. That I mean, that's extremely contentious, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Because Britain has actually grown faster than France and Germany and other European Union countries since Brexit. So it doesn't really add up. It's very politicized, very contentious, but take it for what it is, I guess.
Here's the lesson for the UK. If they want to make their numbers look better, they should hire Mark Carney and just use different stats. Oh, right, they did. They did hire him, and that didn't work out.
He also said, if you remember your Carneyology, he also said that Brexit was going to basically set fire to the British economy and everything was going to be awful and living standards were going to collapse. But apparently, the trajectory is better after Brexit in Britain than it is in Canada. Explain that one, Mr. Carney.
Well, here we're getting to the part where bureaucrats and elitists and that, they're not too worried about the meat counter or planes, limos, and planes, trains, and automobiles, right? He saw Pierre Tremblay, the president of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, billed taxpayers he makes $343,000 a year. I mean, that's paltry compared to some of the other guys, I guess, right? He's making half of what the other guys make, but he makes up for that in his billings, right? So, stayed at French resort hotels, dozen flights between Ottawa, rather than take a train, Ottawa and Toronto. Why would you want to take a train between Ottawa and Toronto when you can fly first class, right? Seems silly.
Or do what every other peasant does and drive. Obviously, because he couldn't be bothered, because it's about 5 hours, and he couldn't be bothered to do it.
just in his first year on the job, $3,500 on limo rides from Toronto's Pearson International Airport. Why take a cab when you can ride in a limo? Right?
Who even wants to drive in a limo these days? It's not exactly luxury, is it?
$27,000 for 37 flights back and forth to Ottawa for routine meetings. $27,000. So those are not WestJet economy fares. Those are pretty good nights, pretty good fares. But while everybody is staring at the meat counter, like wishing and wondering, they got the whole family there at the meat counter looking at that steak and thinking that, like instead of planning for a vacation, you're planning for that steak. These guys are just like living lavishly on the taxpayer dollar, right? He subsequently raised his travel and hospitality budget from $100,000 a year to $185,000, plus an additional, ready, $50,000 for an executive and housing allowance for the president. Why not, eh?
So that's more in travel expenses and housing expenses than most Canadians could ever dream of earning in a year. But that's just to transport and house this very special little fella.
All tax-free, too. But as ludicrous as that one is, let's talk about our favorite doctor here. She makes a little more money than him, actually, Dr. Mona Nemer, the alien lady, eh? And she says it's possible aliens have already visited Earth. Yeah, I think they've taken control of many of the political leaders. Though the technology, she makes $393,000 a year.
She is therefore more important than the guy in charge of nuclear safety in Canada. Who decides on these salaries?
And she says, is it possible we've been visited by extraterrestrials? And this is her trying to get a raise, I guess. Logically, the first step would be send robots. And that's what we're doing on Mars right now. You're not doing it. Elon Musk is doing it. You're not doing anything.
Well, NASA is doing it. It's not really a Canadian enterprise, is it?
No, it's Elon Musk for Mars. Elon's working with NASA on the moon base. But she said
they've got robots up there, haven't they? Can't remember what it's called now, the latest one. Yeah, but NASA's got one up there right now.
Yeah, I was talking about like Elon's going to send Optimus up there. She said there could be life elsewhere in the universe. I mean, that's just, okay. Like, that just seems obvious. Given the number of solar systems, okay. But she said one of the things they're worried about, though, is, like the stigma. Unidentified aerial phenomena stigma refers to a set of aspirations cast towards people who speak openly about research phenomena. The Sky Canada project, right? Sky Canada project, that's 7 employees. Remember we talked about that? They have 7 employees. How much money do they have just staring out the window? Seeks to dispel stigma by recommending approaches that promote openness, transparency, and scientific integrity. Yeah, so they're trying to come up with a better name for reporting it. That's where they did this whole report. I think we talked about that report a few weeks back. I think it was several weeks now. And the whole point of that report was not how to classify these things, to find these things or investigate them. It's just in how we report them, like what name should be used so that there's no stigma attached to it. You can't even make it up.
And certainly don't presume their gender or anything like that. That would be atrocious, wouldn't it?
We don't want aliens coming here and then feeling that they've been stigmatized, or the people that report them. Maybe she should just watch X-Files. Maybe that's what they do. Just watch X-Files.
Someone here on YouTube put out a pretty interesting comment there, saying, called Global Traveler, who I assume is an American, says, "We have the experience of having a poor neighbor next door. Are we going to have to build a wall to keep you out?" In other words, Canadians. I mean, obviously he's having a troll. You're trolling us. Congratulations. But it's not a completely silly question, is it? Because if the disparity continues to, if it goes crazy and the divergence is enormous, America will have to be worried about things like that. Certainly, like illegal immigration from Canadian citizens who just want to go and work in America because they'll get like double the salary or something. One has to presume that will become a consideration. Yeah.
Or will companies move south and take their capital with them? Oh, wait, they already have. Brookfield. Remember that? Who did that? Who moved Brookfield? I can't remember. Anyway, big news in Canada. Gathering in front of Toronto City Hall as they're raising the Palestinian flag. And this is going to happen in a few cities across Canada today. And it's going to happen in Calgary, Brampton, Toronto. You got to say it, Toronto, eh? There we go.
Yeah. That's classic Calgary, doesn't it? You can imagine them there riding in on a steer with a cowboy hat on saying, "I'm here for Palestine." It's just classic Calgary, that, isn't it?
And I try not to use the word, but Mark Carney loves the use of the ums and ahs when he's searching for the next. I don't know what he's searching for when he doesn't want to answer a question. But it says excessive use of ums and ahs when speaking could indicate declining brain health, and people who rely on filler words as and ah could be suffering from cognitive decline. And that's from the Baycrest Hospital, University of Toronto, and York University, suggesting that aging old adults who struggle to find words use long pauses and excessive fillers. I would say I'm going to defend Mark Carney here, or if you're trying to think of the next best, what's that? I don't want to say the word lie. Narrative? Narrative, a better word? Non-truth?
Yeah.
BS?
Manipulation of the truth, perhaps. Reframing of reality, maybe is another way.
There should be like an asterisk there. Unless you're trying to mislead or spread misinformation, or like they like to say there, misinformation or disinformation. Then
it should just say, or if you're a politician, really.
Use all the ums and ahs you need. But here's the big news. Ready? You ready? You're hanging on the edge of your seat? Canada is officially on its way to becoming a true spacefaring nation. The government of Canada is investing $182 million in a sovereign, now they're starting to use that word, sovereign space launch capabilities. Is this three guys with a bottle rocket where you put the water one, I ever used one of those in a park where you pressurize a water bottle rocket and then shoot it up into the sky? Because $182 million, not going to get you very far in a space race.
I mean, especially when you look at like the Indians, the Chinese, the sort of new arrivals in the space world, they're chucking enormous amounts of money at it. I mean,
so who's this press release for? Like, who's dumb enough to think this is actually going to amount to anything other than some more grift for somebody? Because it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Jeff Bezos must be quaking in his boots, as is Elon Musk, right? And we should try and see if we can get a comment from Elon Musk and say, like, what do you think of this? Canada's going to challenge you in the space race. Because they said that. We're joining the space race. Okay.
Yeah, it's I don't think they're going to be major players, are they? But who knows? Maybe we're wrong.
Well, I bet a lot on it that we're not. But the government of Canada touting it, and it's good for some of those people. They believe all this stuff that's said there. So they're going to open up our own spaceport. This is even funnier. I got to phone some of my friends in Newfoundland. The Atlantic Spaceport Complex in Newfoundland. How many schooner beers do you have to drink before you start to believe that there will be a spaceport in Newfoundland?
I reckon they've got the grit to give it a go. they've got the grit and the tenacity to try, but I just don't think that that's enough money, is it, or enough expertise, new fees or not.
I think if I was a Newfoundlander right now, I'd be getting a form to fill it out and see if I can get a crack at that $185 million that they're going to dole out. But I got bad news for you, though. The insiders have already taken off probably about 180 of that, so there'd be $2 million that they drip out there for people in their actual things. Most of that money has already been spent, probably. We got some BC news for you, though.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
So I interviewed Mario Canseco, a really good interview, actually. Mario Canseco is the pollster that we use for the Trump election, we use for the provincial elections, and we use for the federal elections. And he came out with a poll, and who were the people to replace John Rustad? And there was 5 names that we came up with, and Gavin Dew was one of the names, and he's one of the front runners, actually. Gavin Dew, Eleanor Sturko was another one. Then also there was a bunch of people. Christy Clark's name came up, and I just think, wow, Christy Clark she'll wear any hat that you're willing to give her power, right? Just like, I'm a liberal, I'm a conservative.
That's why she joins all the parties. So she's got every ground, everything's covered.
She hasn't joined the NDP yet, so maybe that's
how do we know? That might come out.
I think it's well worth watching. John Rustad refusing to step down, though, even though Mario Canseco says it's really going to come down to what the fundraising looks like here in this next time they report their fundraising here. So see if people are done giving him money, because and that's what happened to Falcon, right? They just pulled the rug out from underneath him. They just said, there's no money for you. And that's when Falcon threw in the towel. Basically just went dark that day with everybody.
Yeah, he had the last laugh, didn't he? He jumped on that magic rug, and went for a flight. Went for a nice little fly around. We haven't seen him. Somewhere in the Baghdad area, perhaps, seeing Aladdin.
And then David Eby had his leadership convention there yesterday. And then Ravi Parmar, who's been talked about a lot as his replacement, came out and congratulated him. And Eby getting a strong, resounding victory as the BC NDP convention, with 83% of the members voting against it. He didn't even get a review. They didn't even put him up for a review, really. They just said, like, he's our man. I'm surprised at that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was no conspiracy in the background, was there? There was no Brutus ready to shank him in the back. So in the absence of that, it's just no challenger. So
one of the things I would do is I would go watch the Mario Canseco interview, and then one of the comments in there is the Conservatives seem to want to air their laundry by throwing it all around the room, where at least David Eby, one of the things you can say about the NDP is that they kind of keep it in a basket and they keep it all contained, and nobody gets to see all the dirty laundry. They do a good job of keeping their, and I would even say the Liberals do a fairly good job of trying to keep their mess contained.
Big time.
Yeah. So
even like 2 cases that come to mind involving anti-Semitism in the Liberal Party and also in the PCNDP. And Selena Robinson, the PCNDP, she's the closest that we've come to somebody kind of like blowing the whistle and saying, like, look at the mess that's going on here. Because she, it's been said by some observers that she was basically pushed out and it was to do with anti-Semitism and anti-Israel ideology, at least. But they contained that very rapidly, didn't they? And it just kind of dribbled away. It disappeared. And then in the Liberal Party, I can't remember the guy's name now, but I'm sure you know who I mean. The Jewish MP who talked about anti-Semitism and was freaking out about a lot of things. He's now some sort of junior minister in the Liberal government. So they figured it out, I guess.
One of the other comments with Mario Canseco, which is well worth watching, is and I just lost my train of thought there. But there's some good stuff in that interview for sure.
Anthony House's father, by the way, is the name of that guy that I was thinking of.
There you go. I'd go watch that interview. Oh, that's what it was. Between Jeff Moyse and Mario Canseco, a lot of thoughts on this Cowichan land decision we're going to talk about in a second here is being run right out of the Premier's office. That not a lot of the MLAs have knowledge on it. So I'd go watch the Jeff Moyse interview and also the Mario Kutseko interview. You get some insights there as to what's going on. So I was wondering why none of the NDP MLAs would push back on it, because this could be the big moment where we see pitchforks in the street and that for David Eby because of what's happening with property rights. I did do an interview. I do a kind of a regular interview with Dennis Storchuk, and then also he brought in Andre, and I'm not going to be able to pronounce his last name. And then the young man in the bottom corner there did fight for the Ukrainian army, was wounded there, and then since then has left for Canada with his pregnant wife, who's a doctor here, but can't be a doctor here, so she can't work as a doctor. But they can't get PR, so this whole interview is about there's 300,000 Ukrainians here in Canada. They can't get their PR, and according to Dennis, when he talked to Mark Carney personally, they said it's because Zelensky doesn't want them to give him permanent residency status. He wants them back in Ukraine. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, what a horror show that is, that whole thing. I feel very sad for the Ukrainians because their energy system is being like systematically and very sort of effectively targeted, and they're running out of energy now.
We're going to try and do an interview. Dennis is going to set it up, so we're going to actually try and interview somebody from Kiev next time he comes in. We're going to actually try to do a call from somebody in Kiev and talk about that, because they are having rolling blackouts, or like they only get power like 3 hours of the day. And we're coming into winter, and we all know that winter is not very kind in Ukraine and or in Russia. Let's do some international media here as we wind things up. There's some good stuff in here.
Coming to you live from the Now Media Newsroom.
Peter Doocy talking about, remember he was Joe Biden's favorite. What did Joe Biden say to him that one time? He called him a name. Son of a... he was a son of somebody. Peter Doocy, let's talk about their inflation and their numbers here. Let's hear a little recap from Peter Doocy.
Inflation for the first year of Trump versus Biden. Biden, overall inflation was up 4.3%, higher than Trump, just up 1.6%. Groceries under Biden in that time, up 3.8%, with Trump up 1.3%. And then when it comes to gas, this is crazy. Biden up 24.4%, with Trump it is actually down 5.4%. That is where the biggest difference is. And we heard from the HUD Secretary, Scott Turner, this afternoon. They are racing to cut red tape for...
That's good. So if you're a policymaker right now, and anybody that's watching, it's all about energy. How many times do we say it on the show here? It's all about energy. And the Liberals have told us for years that it has nothing to do with energy. Inflation has nothing to do with energy, when it seems to be the biggest input in everything we do. Every time you wake up, whatever you do, we wouldn't have this show if we weren't using energy. You wouldn't be able to wear clothes without energy. It's in everything. And the Americans, one of the things they've done really well, drill baby drill, is that they've brought down the cost of energy. And they've been selling energy like crazy. Like right now, Canada's moving towards this removal of emissions cap and the CCUS, carbon capture, saying that the world wants to buy carbon-free energy, which is, I did a really good show with Beyond the Ballot with Renee Merrifield. Let's just take an example. So both of us bring LNG to the port. It's the same LNG, and whether it's in Washington State or it's in British Columbia, it's the same LNG. Canada runs some kind of financial scheme here where we clean some air or something else and inject it into the ground and do this hocus pocus thing. And then we kind of like apply that to that LNG. Didn't change the LNG. The LNG is exactly the same. And then they say that the world is wanting to buy our LNG over the Americans' LNG. But facts say America signed a deal with Japan, signed a deal with Germany, signed a deal with South Korea. Deals they begged us for, with no CCUS attached to it. They didn't ask for any CCUS. China doesn't have any, like carbon capture. Nobody does. And so who's asking for it? Who needs it? And then the only person that needs it is the financial people that have invested billions and billions of dollars in this technology that is now basically not wanted or needed in the world. And so there's a company that has vested billions and billions of dollars into it, and there's a lot of investment firms that want their money back, and it looks like it's been financialized, and they're going to sell all these CCUS technologies to Canadian pension funds, the Canadian government. Like, we're giving 75% tax credits. Carbon Capture USA moved to Canada. Carbon Capture USA moved to Canada because they didn't know credits down in the US anymore for climate grifting. And so they moved here. They're going to get 75 cents on the dollar. So for every 25 cents they put, you know what I mean? Can your business get that? Can your business get that? 75 cents tax credits? And then you get the ability to tax our energy in perpetuity. Isn't that amazing? That is just wild. What a
It's
deal.
astonishing, really, isn't it?
What a deal. Like, crazy.
But just to briefly go back to what you said there about energy and how it's kind of in everything and all the rest of it. Another way of looking at that is energy, or the availability of energy, is the primary restriction on human activities, isn't it? That's another way. It's like another way of considering it. If you want to do stuff, anything at all, like build things, have cheaper food or food at all, and so on, go places, basically everything, it all requires energy. And the only real limit on how far you can go, how big you can go, how much you can do, how much of something you can produce is the availability of energy. In that context, does it not strike anybody else as being a little bit mad to put artificial constraints on top of the real constraints when it comes to the production of energy? Why would anybody do that? It's something that, but this almost belongs in like a philosophy seminar where we can all sit around and just say, like, why would somebody do that? Why would any government, a government that exists to improve the lives of its people, why would it do that? Why would it put a limit, a restriction on something that we need to do everything?
And you're going to hear Mark Carney and them say that the world is demanding carbon capture. And it's true in some areas, but what's the exemption in Europe right now for carbon capture? What's the exemption? Which product?
Yeah, energy.
What does the world want? Cheap energy, reliable energy. And Ian said it really a lot better on Friday as well. So let's say that Canada has energy at the port of Vancouver, and the Americans have it at Seattle, just for the sake of argument. They have it there, and now they want to sell it to Japan. Who would the Japanese buy it from if they didn't already have deals? Who has the military to protect the shipments?
Yeah,
Canada
and also to protect Japan's waters as well and airspace.
So Canada, Coast Guard won't even board a vessel. Never mind protect anything. Do you know what I mean? So give your head a shake. This green grift is where this person wrote there is worth trillions. Yeah, it is trillions. Go read my LinkedIn. It really explains what's going on here. So they're going to keep telling you about CCUS and how the world's demanding it. Yet all the deals that are getting done by the Americans, there's no CCUS. China doesn't want CCUS. Russians sure ain't selling. You think the Germans are asking the Russians when they're buying their LNG and their gas from oil and gas from Putin if they're asking for his carbon credits? Clowns.
I mean, the Chinese, it's not only that the Chinese don't have a system like that in place, but the Chinese also are responsible for the largest proportion of all carbon emissions, and not just carbon emissions, which is something that's quite abstract. A lot of people don't like to even talk about it. But the filth, the mess, the sort of the poison that's put out into the physical environment by Chinese industry, and that doesn't stop all those countries. Most countries in the world, it doesn't stop them having China as their #1 trade partner.
I'm going to have to say, Ian, like, you haven't been reading the Canadian media, the legacy media. China is one of the leaders in climate.
That's because they produce solar panels and wind turbines, and in the process destroy what's left of the Chinese countryside. Which is actually China's one of the most environmentally, biologically diverse countries on the planet. If you really cared about nature, like the physical manifestation of nature, like trees and rivers and animals and things, all you would ever do with your life is protest outside the Chinese embassy. wherever you are, the nearest one to you, or go to China and protest if you were feeling courageous. Because China is an immensely beautiful and precious country in terms of its environment. And yet, they don't care. They don't really care about that at all. They will just build anything, anywhere, to any extent, and then they sell it to the Koreans, the Japanese, the Europeans. Are we really gonna engage in this fiction, and speak as if these countries care about what you do with the environment when it comes to getting their essentials? And then in many cases, they're not even getting essentials from China. They're getting junk. They're getting like a Buzz Lightyear toy or something like that. It's not like energy, which is like a necessary fact of life.
All the people defending David Eby's decision and Mark Carney's decision to fund and choose China to build the BC ferries, saying, well, it's cheaper over there. We can't build it for this, cheaper. It blows my mind that it's the same thing that Canada can't compete if we're going to talk about straight on price. They get to use human rights violations for their labor, slave labor in many cases. They get to use inferior steel and aluminum, and they have no industrial carbon tax. Of course we can't compete. So then that's it then. That's it. We don't have an economy. And plus all the capital is going to the United States, including Mark Carney's Brookfield. Where's Brookfield? Everybody has so much room on their plate. Brookfield, which you would think Mark Carney, Canada first, right? So here's a guy that can influence Brookfield still, and I'm sure he has tremendous influence over Brookfield. Just made a $100 billion investment in the United States. And what are they going to come? They're going to come to Canada. They're going to invest too. You know what they're going to invest here in Canada? CCUS, which adds nothing of value to anything. But in the United States, they're going to create energy for all the AI companies with nuclear plants. Think of it. In the United States, they're actually going to create something that people want. They're going to create energy with nuclear plants. In Canada, they're going to grift the taxpayer and steal from the pension funds and from you, the taxpayer.
But from their perspective, you might argue, they're both capital outlays.
They fund their projects in the United States.
Yeah, but from their perspective, they're both capital outlays that promise a return. And it doesn't really matter how that return is generated from their perspective, but it does matter for the people of the United States who get jobs, the prospect of more jobs down the line, tax revenue and all the rest of it, and not to mention benefiting from AI, which can increase productivity and so on and so on. In Canada, we get we basically pay a tithe and get nothing in return.
So if you like what we're saying here and you believe in a free and independent press, then support us by liking, sharing. Somebody even donated $5 to us on Friday, I think. You can definitely share and help us reach a bigger audience. Meanwhile, CBC, who gets $1.55 billion of your tax dollars, and if you go to their website, they don't talk about any of this stuff. They don't highlight anything. They basically just are what you call it, a PR department. That's an expensive PR department for the Liberal Party of Canada. Again, maybe they changed their website right now. Let's see what they got on their website. What are they trying to tell us right now? Budget government's fate in the air as MPs prepare for crucial vote. And they got a really nice complimentary picture. Now you're going to have to hit the refresh button there. It's just basically...
No, have you seen that story? You've seen the second one down. Liberals ready for an election if budget fails.
It's just like, here's the PR department. What's in the federal budget?
One. So there's a story there. Liberals ready for an election. Next story down. We're always ready for an election, says government whip.
And then the next one is like, what's in the federal budget for you? Nothing. But I'm sure they found something, right? It's just... At the very least, if you dispute what we say about them being favourable to the Liberal Party, at the very least, you can't deny that the CBC basically represents one group, one sort of cultural, philosophical group in Canada, which is the sort of liberal left, small L liberal left. You know, people that live in cities like Vancouver and Ottawa and Toronto. That's who they represent. And they do that at the expense of the rest of the population that live in places like Newfoundland and Alberta and Saskatchewan and all the rest of it. There you go, Jeffrey Epstein's victims. They got an ad they're running that calls for the documents to release. Just get it over with, man. Get these documents out there. And maybe we'll see some of these BlackRock guys and all these other guys run for the hills.
Well, he was getting cut to pieces on this, Trump. I don't know why he's waited so long. There must be something in there that's not good for him, because it wouldn't make sense
or
otherwise.
Somebody he's protecting, or something about him.
Yeah.
I don't.
Something that he doesn't want, that he's not going to be happy about when it's out there. But it does seem quite foolish, and it has all along seemed very, very foolish, because he's lost a lot of his sort of like core support, or some of them anyway, who started to turn on him. You saw like Marjorie Taylor Greene bailed.
There's some Canadian names in there too. Release them. Let's have a look.
But he's got to be, he's got to be careful. It's kind of like an own goal, really. He didn't an unforced error. Like he didn't need to lose this steam that he generated there with his own base. And then the other one, which is much, much more controversial, is when it comes to Israel. Obviously, I'm sure most people are aware of Tucker Carlson and some other voices that have started to come out and complain about America's support for Israel. That's like the two sort of areas where he's kind of fragile, I would say. But now he's got rid of the Epstein one at least, and it's just the other one, the Tucker splinter cell.
So Ford partnering with Amazon, that's the second dealer that I know of. I think Hyundai is going to sell their vehicles online as well, but Ford's partnering with Amazon to sell used vehicles online. There you go. You can get yourself a used vehicle. And here's India deepens energy ties with the U.S. to mend trade relations amid tariff strains. So, I think that, Trump was trying to get India off of Putin's energy. So that, because here's the thing about Europe, and I talked about with Dennis Storchuk there. Here is the Europeans screaming about, get more money for Trump or for Ukrainian weapons, when they're actually funding the war for Putin by buying his energy. It's just ridiculous, right? And then and I didn't verify it, but the Dennis and them saying that a lot of this money that's going to Ukraine is actually going first to NATO to buy new weapons and then give their old junk to Ukraine and then mark it up for the full price and say that's what was drifted over there. I know Canada sent some used equipment over there too. That's all we have is used equipment, by the way. But here's your old friend Al Gore, literally amping it up because he lost his buddy Bill Gates. Even throws some shade on Bill Gates there as he goes on to one of his. This is one of the biggest tirades I've heard Al Gore go on. Isn't it time Al just takes a seat somewhere? How much money does Al Gore make off of climate grift, do you think?
I'm sure he made a hell of a lot of money off that documentary. There was a book tie-in as well, wasn't there?
Let's have a listen to our friend Al Gore.
30, which is kind of a full circle moment. And of course, the purpose is to deal with the climate crisis, and this thin blue shell of atmosphere surrounding our planet is so thin it's only 5 to 7 kilometers thick. It's blue because that's where the oxygen is, and we are using it as an open sewer for 175 million tons of man-made global warming pollution spewed into it every single day. It adds up, it lingers there, and the accumulated amount today will trap as much extra heat as would be released by 750,000 first-generation atomic bombs exploding on the Earth every 24 hours. Literally insane that we're allowing this to continue. In any case, the temperatures are going up because of that. Last year was the hottest year in recorded history. We've seen a few million climate refugees trigger neo-authoritarianism and ultra-nationalism. The WHO climate group warns us that the areas that are now physiologically unlivable for human beings because of the temperature and humidity, relatively small in those dark areas, are now expanding and could, if we don't make rapid changes over the next 35 years, include heavily populated areas in India, Pakistan, Central America, Africa, South America, including Belize, by the way. That's in the area that could become physiologically unlivable right here where we are meeting. So, the same day that Bill Gates released his backtracking on climate, which got a rave review from Donald Trump, the very same day the highly respected Lancet Commission released its update saying that these health threats from climate have reached unprecedented levels. And the
Whew, he's worked up, eh? He's losing his breath. Either that or he's not exercising. One of the two there, right?
He's getting old, isn't he? Not quite the fresh-faced vice president that he was.
But he's amped it up, though. He's got it up on like level 9 there.
But he's talking about parts of India, Africa, South America. All right, so what are they going to do about it then? They're staring down the barrel of a gun. What are they going to do about it? The answer is less than nothing. The opposite. They're putting out more emissions in those places, and then they're pointing the finger at the likes of Canada and saying, "You fix it." How's that going to work? You know, and this is why Al Gore, Greta Thunberg, all these people are increasingly just background noise now, and that's why Bill Gates was actually listened to when he said something about the climate for once, because it was a pragmatic thing that he said. It was something that people could actually understand and agree with. The reality is, Canada, Europe, the US, you know, countries like that, they're not going to spend trillions of dollars and lower their standards of living and unilaterally destroy their economies so that the Sahel and parts of central India don't get too hot in 70 years, 75 years. Obviously, they're not going to do that. That's going to be for the Indians to do, and the South Americans and the Chinese, primarily at least. You know, I'm sure that Western countries will be happy to give them a hand. But the way that this is always framed at the likes of COP is, all right, you lot kind of pioneered the Industrial Revolution, so you pay for everything. Obviously, that's nobody's going to swallow that garbage except Al Gore.
And hypocrisy is their best tool, right? They all fly there in private jets, jet around the world, and even Bill Gates said it himself. I probably have the largest carbon footprint in the world. But obviously, if you're an elitist, you get to do whatever you want. It's the minions like us that can eat cloned beef and you know, stay in your house and obey and do all these things and
turn the heating off and wear 10 sweaters and have a candle like they do in Germany. Get warm with your candle while they're just like in a steam room or something.
10 sweaters is that's 7 too many. You would be relegated to 3.
Yeah, the Brookfield sweater manufactory can only give you 3 this time, I'm afraid.
Well, listen, I just want to recap this for you. Listen to this. Like, Mark Carney, to the people that think Mark Carney is your hero, he says, buy Canada. He literally has taken Brookfield, one of the biggest investment vehicles we have in Canada, taken it to the United States for, he said it himself, to access capital. To access capital. He took it to the United States. They did a major deal down there, 2 Canadian companies actually, Cameco and Brookfield did a major deal down there to build 8 nuclear plants, right? And what does Canada get in return? CCUS, that nobody else wants in the world. We're going to get CCUS, which is basically grifting off of energy, right? It's just taking, it's just moving stuff around. It's basically taking something, putting up fans, sucking air through it, and then saying you captured something, putting it deep underground, drilling holes, putting it underground, and then charging a tax to energy companies. It's like how we're looking after the military right now. It's just jokes. It's absolute jokes.
It's baggage, really, isn't it? It's like the energy sector in Canada. If that's the horse that drags us all, the rest of Canada, it's what gives us our motion. It's leading the way. It's just putting more weight on it.
Right? You just lopped off one leg, right? And you just said, compete.
Or like chopped off its shoulder for a horse burger. Like, thanks, mate.
Now you go and compete with the Americans, and we can't compete, right? Because we haven't done anything in our mill. Again, if we get our LNG to port, who's going to get to sell it? Who has the military might in the world? Who's going to protect the ships? Who does protect the ships? Who protects shipping lanes in the world? Who protects shipping lanes?
And who protects, as it stands, whether it's viable or not in the long term, that's another question. But who protects the Northwest Passage as well in Canada's Arctic? That's supposedly another one of our like golden geese. But we don't have the technology. We don't have the military presence to defend that glorious Northwest Passage, do we? Or any other part of Canada, really.
I think, Canadians just got to start being honest and demanding better instead of just pretending, like that these things don't exist. Canada was brought to its knees. Canada was brought to its knees economically by liberal policies. These same liberal policies continue. Instead of removing these things they put Bill C5 in place. This is not helping. This is not helping. And Brookfield's an example of it. And also our media. Like, why wouldn't they ask that question? If you want to buy Canadian, why don't you move Brookfield back to Canada? Why don't you make that investment in Canada? Why don't you build 8 nuclear plants here and attract AI companies? Because that's what they want. They want energy. They want energy. You got to build it, like the old Field of Dreams. Build it, and they will come.
And that really is we have that in mega abundance as well, don't we? It's like, we don't even have to. Like, there are some countries like Britain. They don't have energy. They're screwed in so many ways, and they keep hearing it's all about energy. This century, it's like the energy century, and here we sit with just like more energy than we could ever use in the entire lifetime of the planet. We're like a uniquely blessed country here in terms of energy, and energy is the currency of the 21st century, or really any century, you could argue. And we're just saying, yeah, let's not. Nah, we don't need that.
Today, I don't think I have anything else going on today, but tomorrow Renee's in with Beyond the Ballot, which is always a great show, and also have a candidate that ran in the Conservative election. Alexander Wright says she has something to say. You always liked her.
Well, she's funny, isn't she? She's lighthearted. Very rare traits in a political person.
There you go. That's our show for today. We're back tomorrow. Again, like, subscribe, share. Please do that. We're getting a larger audience, and we thank you for that. We're closing in on 1 million views a month, which is we appreciate. And let's get us to 1 million. Let's get a voice out there. Let's get media that actually asks questions. Help us get to they won't even answer our emails. It's impossible to get responses. We need to get Ian into the parliamentary gallery too, so maybe somebody will ask a question that means something in those scrums. Anyway, that's our show for today. Thank you for watching Now Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.